Next up, we've got Chris and Shaun are going to come up and join us. If they... Oh, they're right here, right in front of me. So we've got Chris and Shaun. They're going to tell you a little bit about what they do throughout a presentation. But Chris is from 42 Days, and Shaun is from Open Pantry consultancy businesses that work very closely together, and they'll tell you more about it. Also, just a little plug for Shaun's podcast as well. So Principles of Hospitality. Check that out as well for some great little ideas. I'm going to hand over to them now.
Hi everyone, it's good to be back. I was actually here last year on a panel, so fantastic to be back in this space. My name's Shaun De Vries. I'm from Open Pantry Consulting, as you can see from behind me, and also my shirt. There you go. So here's a picture of me with no hair and looking a bit more professional. So just a bit about me. So I've been in the hospitality industry for just on 25 years. Originally from South Australia, so like you guys even more. Originally from South Australia, but I've also lived and worked in Brisbane, Perth, and in Melbourne for the last 10 years. So about 10 years ago, I decided to come to Melbourne because I wanted to learn a bit more about independent brands. So I've been fortunate to do everything from coffee, bakeries, to burgers and desserts and salads. So I've kind of hit every single market, but coffee's been a big important part of that journey for me as well. Today we really want to talk about what's important for your business as you grow. So part of our consultancy works with hospitality businesses and a lot of cafes in that as well, about helping them grow and helping them be successful, either in growth in their own venue, their single venue, or if you want to grow into multiple venues as well. So we'll run through that a bit today. But Chris, do you want to talk about yourself before we go forward?
I don't like talking about myself, Shaun, but I will anyway. So I'm Chris. As you can see up there, I'm a leadership coach now, but I've been in hospitality for 15, 20 years. So my background is HR, so I've been designing programs for learning development. I've done that now for over 10,000 employees over that time. So it's been a long time. I've worked with Shaun for the better part of 10 years of that. So together, we've created training programs, and my passion is really developing people. So today we're going to talk to you a little bit about training reimagined, so it's something a bit different. I'll pass it back over to Shaun.
We've also got the rest of our team here today as well, so Bruna and Diane at the back there, if they want to chuck their hands up. So they work with us in regards with hospitality, consultancy, operations development, and also tech. Tech's a really big important part of our business as well now as well. Okay, so what are we going to talk to you about today? First, I'm going to kick off with a case study with a client that we've been working with the last couple of years, who's actually also a Grinders customer, funnily enough. We're going to look at opportunities to pivot. So we're going to talk about 3 different areas in which we believe you can actually move forward and focus on the business. What can you do in that? What can you do as well in that? So we didn't want to come today with just what we do as a consultancy brand. We wanted to focus on some key takeaways that you can actually work in with your business. And then we're going to focus on training. So we're going to link it over to Chris, and Chris is going to talk about leadership and development and how you can focus on that with your people. Okay, so this is a cafe that we've been working with for close to 2 years now. So this is in Airlie Beach. I don't know if anyone's been to Airlie Beach before. It's obviously a very tourist heavy place. And we work with this particular customer who had actually never worked in hospitality before. He never owned a cafe before. He actually is an engineer by trade, had worked in the mining industry for many, many years, had come back to Airlie Beach and decided that he wanted to own and run this cafe. So he bought this. He had fortunately listened to a couple of our podcasts over the years. The podcast's been going for about 7 years, around 250 episodes. And he listened to a couple of the podcasts, then reached out to me and said, hey, like you seem to know what you're talking about in regards with consultancy, in regards with cafes. Can you coach me and help me open this cafe? So what we did with him was we worked on a new business plan. So this was an existing business, and we were working with him to take that over. So he purchased this particular business. He was an engineer with no previous hospitality experience, but he was really, really good at project management. So the work that we did with him was really working on his business operations. So we did a review of what was happening at that point, and then worked on how we could structure it differently over the period of months So we worked with him quite aggressively at the start. It was twice a week phone calls, video chats, those kind of different things, to the point now where we catch up every other month. So we looked at his menu review, we did a technology review, we looked at obviously his recruitment and training. If you know Airlie Beach at all, it's an interesting place. It's obviously got a big local base, but it's also got a lot of backpackers who come. So the backpackers that come stay for about 16 weeks, and then they leave and they go somewhere else. So we needed to build something that was a real different plan than even what I had done before, to actually build in a training program for 4 months, to have those people working different roles within inside the business, and then leaving, and then bringing on another cohort, and then doing the same thing. So actually working with that kind of business model. And then we did one-on-one coaching. So as I said, we did weekly coaching sessions, and that's now every other month. And during those coaching sessions, we talk about operations, we talk about his training program, we talk about obviously how sales are going, we look at product mixes, those kind of different things. So he has basically put in place everything that we've asked, which is great. So the benefit of him not coming from hospitality beforehand in a lot of respect was the fact that he was really open-minded and able to execute on a lot of these different things. He employed a head chef as well, who was able to do quarterly reviews and seasonal reviews of their menu, able to really condense the menu. And the other thing, which was a major game changer as well, which increased, you can see the growth turnover increased there by over 25% since we worked with him, is the fact that he brought in order at table technology, but made sure that he didn't miss the customer experience while putting that in. And that's what we see in a lot of venues that we see around the place, is they'll bring in order at table, which has obviously happened the last couple of years because of COVID, but unfortunately they put it in and don't think about the steps of service, and sometimes the customer experience is lost. So we made sure that when we implemented this with him, that, that we focused on that, so you still had the great engagement of staff. So you can see there, like, he, when I texted him last week and I said, can we share your story? And he's like, absolutely. And then he just sent me all these figures. So I have the right to show all those figures. So we usually don't share those kind of numbers. But growth in 25.5%, on target to hit $2.13 million in revenue, up from 1.7. And this is a cafe which opens at 6:30 in the morning and closes at 1:30 in the afternoon. And then on Sundays, it actually closes at 1. And before, when it had sales of 1.7 when he took it over, they were also trading Friday and Saturday nights as a bar. So this is a bar component where they've actually got tap beers and slushies and those kind of different things. We've muted all those and turned all those things off and actually just focused on coffee. How do we focus on coffee? How do we focus on food complementing that in order to bring that average sale up? Cost of goods reduced from over 30% to 25%. Now that is insane numbers. That is very, very good. That's because basically he's got a really good product mix with cross-functional ingredients across his menu, and he's making sure that he's dealing with less suppliers rather than more suppliers. So it's under about 8 suppliers that he's got. When he took over the business, it had probably close to 20 different suppliers. So which means when you're trying to do tendering processes, it's really hard to try and get a better deal in regards to your supply chain. Labour costs from 40.9 to, what are we at? 36. So that's with him not working in the business. So that's with him having a full cafe manager, a head chef, a sous chef underneath him who pretty much earns the same amount of money. So the head chef's on about 80 grand. And then the cafe manager's on about, I think about 70 odd or 75. So really like well paid staff across the board. And they get full training, they get really good incentives as well. So he's really fortunate, is that he's really thought about his business in a holistic way and was able to stand outside his business once it was really operating and think about, how can I make this better? How can I make this better for my family? How can I make sure that this doesn't become my 9-to-5 job? So during the week, he actually goes and consults on in the mining industry, and then comes back and looks after his cafe, and he's built another house and all these different things, which has just been the stepping stones of great success. We wanted to bring three pain points that we hear from all our clients, whether they be in cafes or just across the industry, about things that we hear as a consultancy firm that we wanted to share with you today that we think are consistent and maybe ways that you could help in order to move your business forward. One is obviously the recruitment of quality staff. We have a recruitment division of what we do. We deal in recruitment all the time. And just to get quality staff consistently amongst businesses, especially in something as competitive as the cafe industry, is really, really hard. Rising supply chain costs and operational costs. So obviously this is food costs we're going to talk about today. You obviously get cracking deals with grinders, so make sure you stay with grinders. But every other cost, we'll talk about that. And then as I just talked about, technology being used incorrectly. But we'll get into that in a second. First one about recruitment. It's obviously no surprise the cafe industry is incredibly competitive. In order to attract the best quality baristas, cafe managers, amongst your business, I know is a real challenge because we hear it all the time. The one thing which we focus on with our people that we work with and advise is really making sure you've got a fantastic job board and job ad when you go out to market and you try and recruit people. Trying to make your business sound different is a really important thing. And I know it's sometimes really, really hard. But if you can share your founder's story, if you can share about how you're different, how much you love the business, why it's different from so many other cafes that are around you, we found that to be a really big thing when candidates talk to us, is the differentiator into why they pick a particular business to work in. The second part in that is the training program. So obviously you guys know how to make incredible cups of coffee every single day to volume, right? But if you don't onboard and orientate staff well, from what we see with the data that we see, they leave pretty quick. So if you can get not only day 1 to day 7 right, but the pre-employment hire right, contract, what time do I need to be there, when do I get my uniform, who am I buddying up with, what's my first day look like, what's my first week look like, what's my first 6 weeks look like. If you can get the first 6 weeks right, then you're more likely to keep quality staff on board for longer. That's the thing that we definitely find. But if you take anything away from this, just get day 1 right. Sit down with the staff member for half an hour to an hour, tell them why you bought the business, tell them why it's important to them, why it's important to you. Hopefully that'll rub off on them. Any questions they have, that'll solve a lot of the problems that you get in those first couple of months of a new hire. Rising food supply chain costs. So everyone obviously knows about the challenges with inflation and obviously rising costs across the industry. Things like milk and food have obviously gone up exponentially. The one thing which we find, especially with cafe menus, is sometimes the food component can be really, the food menu can actually be really big. We worked with a cafe recently where they had about nearly 30 food dishes on the menu. The ones which we see are really competitive and do really well and actually really busy are the ones that probably have somewhere between 12 to 15 to 18 different food items on their menu. Especially here in Melbourne, for those people who are outside of Victoria today, one thing you'll probably see is a lot of sandwich bars and wine bars as well as cafes that are really popular in Victoria. And the one reason why they're probably really popular is because they have a really simplistic menu. So I think sometimes in the industry we think, we're really proud of the cafes that we have, so therefore we have to have a really big menu to offer because we want to make sure that we hit every single marker, especially in places like shopping centres, outside of street sites, because we get a bigger demographic of people coming through. So we want to make sure we hit every single person. But the point I want you to take out of this today is you need to be special for something. So if you can do 12 to 15 items on your food menu really, really well, that'll obviously make a customer's journey easier because it'll be quicker for them to buy a product because they don't have to wait as long. They don't have to look at a menu for as long. They can make a quicker choice, which means that product is going to be made quicker because the chefs have less to make and hopefully more cross-functional ingredients, which means that person is going to get their product quicker in under 15 minutes, which means they're going to eat it quicker, which means you can turn a table quicker. So all these things, when you think about menus and revising them every 3 months or 6 months, just has a flow-on effect of positivity for your business in a financial capacity. The other thing which we really ask people to do is do a tender process every 12 months with your food suppliers and understand what your cost of goods are. Sometimes the amount of conversations we get with a new client where they say theoretical cost of goods, where they don't really understand what their supply chain is or what their costs are, just understand that. It's usually the second biggest line item in your business. Because then if you understand your cost of goods, then you understand your wastage, and then you understand how your menu should be developed. Really, really important. And then finally, technology. So I just hinted at when we talked about Sidewalk, but obviously over the last 3 to 4 years with the advent of COVID, the supply chain and technology, the technology stack has become even more complicated. 5 years ago, the most advanced thing in our venues from a technology standpoint was a point of sale system, right? Now it's point of sale, it's order at table, it's booking systems, it's supply chain backends, it's marketing, it's all these different things. And I know from the customers that we speak to, it can become incredibly complicated. These subscription costs every month, someone's taking 2.5% of my revenue for order at table, like it just becomes really hard. So a bit like supply chain, all we'd ask you to do is just review it every 6 months. 6 months is long enough to see if that technology is actually working inside your venue. And then it will just dictate if that's the right decision for you or not. But if you're thinking about things like order at table, just make sure you have steps of service inside your business. So that customer is engaged within 30 seconds. They get water when they sit down before they order their coffee. Those kind of little nuanced things. If you can get a hello and goodbye right, you're usually on a way for a customer to come back. This is just something simple we call the pantry review. When we work with a new client, we focus on these, what we call the 8 ingredients, to actually give us a 360 on a business health check with the client. So if someone was to come to us with just a name for a cafe, we could work through all these different ingredients to open that cafe really, really successfully. So this is just to give you an idea, if you were going to take anything from today as well, is just to focus on these 8 different elements in order to make your business successful. And if you were going to review this every 6 months or 12 months, I think you'd find it a lot easier. Obviously today we focused on ops and tech and supply chain and food and beverage as well. They're really important. But there's a 9th ingredient that I haven't talked about, Chris. We were trying to work out how we're going to do this. Go to Chris now. So this is the joke. So the 9th ingredient is obviously training reimagined. So Chris, do you want to talk about the amazing leadership and training coaching you do?
I will, thank you, mate. Thanks, Shaun, for doing all that. So this image, I haven't said this story before, but this was us in Sydney about 6 months ago now, was it? Something around that. Diane in the back's in that picture as well. So the story is that I was delivering a session in front of these lovely people, these lovely managers, and I got so excited that what happened in the end, Shaun? Do you remember that? I knocked my coffee over his laptop. He just purchased his Apple Mac. And yet he's still smiling, which is a really good idea. So in the next sort of 15, 20 minutes, I want to start to open up a different conversation about learning. Okay? So learning is shifting very quickly. And I don't know your experience at the moment, if you're finding it more challenging. Who's finding it more challenging to train people at the moment? We got one. Everyone else is cool. No one else? All right, good, thank you. So when we speak to cafe owners, people in hospitality, these are the 4 questions that we're now asking. So the big one is, what are the most in-demand skills needed for today and the future? And how often do we think about this? Everything is shifting really quickly. So Shaun's talking to you about technology and how much technology infrastructure has shifted. But my passion is people and how people learn and what they learn and where they go to find that learning and how does that impact your roles and obviously your business. So there's a lot of new skills now that are needing to be developed. So just out of interest, does anyone know what new skills are in demand or that you think you need? We'll come back to that. Good. So the second question here, how do you imagine these to be achieved? Okay, so again, what does that look like for your cafe? What does it actually mean to bring in new skills now? So we're not just talking about making coffees. We're not just talking about ops. We're talking about how people are engaging. We're talking about service. We're talking about the shift in the landscape. So then we ask ourselves, how do you anticipate these are going to impact daily operations? So if you think about your business over the last 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, what's really shifted? How are people behaving in the workplace now? How's your team working? Is it any different? And the last question is, what benefits do you see to be gained? Okay. So now we're going to just take you through what's happening right now. And so there's a big shift happening around training being just a transactional thing. Okay, so I stand in front of a room, I tell you what to do, you then go and do it. Okay, so it's sort of show, let's do it together, you show me sort of approach. What we're now seeing now in the people that we're talking to and working with is checklists are not enough. Okay, so if you're relying on just using checklists for your training, it's going to fall short. You'll probably ask yourself many times, why don't they get it? Why aren't they being productive? And the same thing for the next part is it's not enough just to have a training program. So what has changed? Well, I can tell you in my own personal world, what I'm developing at the moment is this continuous and personalised learning. So everyone loves Netflix? Probably. So learning is now going to be delivered in the future like Netflix was to TV. Basically what people are going to be able to do is go, these are my needs, these are my gaps, and it's going to direct them to a whole catalogue of different learning that is absolutely personalised to them. So there's a big shift coming in the next 12 months, 2 years, that's what you're going to start to see. So we also know people are consuming learning very differently now. We know that they're not just looking at textbooks and they're not just trying to figure out how to go and follow a step-by-step instruction. They're being absorbed very differently now. So you can see here, these are the big areas that are now being developed. Communication, relationships, EI is a massive one. And a lot of it is around decision-making and behaviour. So think to yourself in your cafe, how much conversations are happening around these areas? Is there any coaching that you're doing in this area to support these things? Just think about how that looks like in your cafe. And then the big part is having a plan. So, as I said to you at the start, I've developed a lot of programs over my time, and I've seen a big shift between just technical-based training to now behaviour-based training. And we find it really challenging now, particularly with communication, how people are communicating with each other. How do your teams like to communicate? Not so much face-to-face anymore, is it? It's what? Text message, WhatsApp, yeah, is massive. Everyone using WhatsApp probably for your team. So that shift to technology has created a massive gap. And the challenge that we face in hospitality is how do you develop the necessary skills to still deliver exceptional service? How do you do that in a really effective and productive way? So we have to replace what has been lost with how we're developing and coaching others to actually master that skill set. Okay. The next slide is, these are 7 learning moments that matter. So you could have the best training in the world, you could spend a lot of time, a lot of money on it, but if you haven't incorporated these 7 things, it's likely going to fall flat. So when you're training people, do you make it fun? Do you make it positive? Who trains in a frustrated manner? Who's like, they just don't get it? Most of us, right? It's usually the second thing. It's a secondary thing. Get real-time feedback. How many people give feedback to their staff immediately after they've done something? A couple of people at the back, yeah? So what we're seeing now is a shift in real-time feedback. Again, with these new development learning initiatives coming through, people can request feedback in real time after they've done a particular learning outcome. That's what's going to be brought to you online pretty soon. What about the third one? The third one is massive for me. Make it personal to me, not my role, but me. So what does that look like? Learning is now shifting in a way where we're treating people as a person as well as the job they're doing. But we're putting in place the priority of who is this person in front of me? What's their mindset? What's their thinking? What I keep saying over and over again, we're trying to teach people how to think, not what to think. And we see this time and time again when we develop this relationship with our staff, saying this is an adult-child relationship, where I tell you to do something and you go and do it. It hasn't worked. It's not working anymore. So we now need to take a mindset shift and say, well, what do we actually need from this? And a big thing is treating the person as a whole. So, make it feel more real. What does that mean? A shift away from concepts and theories to practical based. Immerse me in it. Make it feel real. Everything that I do, I need that experience and I need that feedback. Space it out. So Shaun was talking earlier, get day one right. And then we say get 42 days right, don't we? The problem is that what happens after that first amount of training's been done? What do we typically do? We just let them go. And there's a huge gap in between. So what we're promoting moving forward for everybody is to space out learning, is to make sure you've got a bit of a roadmap here, you've got a bit of a plan. The thing that makes it really important is to understand what their aspirations are. Where do they want to go? What do they want to do? How can we incorporate some of that into their job that they're doing each day? I need variety. Don't just do the same thing. And then I need access to resources. So who here has written down SOPs? Or it's all stuck in the head? Or what happened in our old workplace? It used to be under the fridge, keeping the fridge leveling up. Good training manual that one was. So access to resources, what we're talking about is online. Do you have a place where people can access that learning whenever they need to? Okay. Now we're going to finish off, well, there's a couple more slides, but this one is sort of just capturing all of that around Gen Z. A lot of conversations about Gen Z. Who are they? What do they want? They're a problem. They don't listen. They don't care. They're unreliable. Anything else? Probably a few other words. A few other choice words. I don't know. So what I can say in my experience with working with Gen Z is they're extremely resourceful. Maybe not one person over here. They have been exposed to a whole different learning environment from an early age, right? The phone, the smartphone. Working in a workplace is such a different atmosphere for that. But what we're actually seeing is there is a way to engage them. There is a way to get them involved, to contribute. So there's a couple of points around some of the challenges. A shorter attention span, but we have to capture their interest. We have to make it visually engaging. And they have a desire to choose how they learn, which makes it challenging for us. So one of the things that we developed is, how do we do this well? So who here has heard of micro-learning before, or bite-sized learning? Yeah? So what that looks like is a 5 or 10 minute session focused on one very specific thing only. Okay, so an example is feedback. How do we give feedback? How do we receive feedback? How do we deal with conflict with the customer? All really bite-sized. So the way that we used to do this 10 years ago was do 2 pages, front and back. Here's the context, here's the importance, here's the steps, here's some activities around that, here's some role plays. Now it's shifting online. Then who likes to be in front of a screen doing a video of themselves? Not many people? Sally, you would? You like it? Yeah, they all do. So this is how they love to learn. I have seen cafe owners, instead of sitting in front of their staff teaching them, they'll do videos. They'll do videos of themselves going through things, teaching things, and then they'll post that. And their team will be like, okay, cool, I get that. Now when you come in, we're actually going to apply that. We're actually going to see how we can do that together. And then we're going to give you some feedback. And then we're going to get together again tomorrow and we're going to see how you went. So video is really important for this group. 50% of the way that we learn is done through visual imaging. Okay? And the last one is coaching, which is where I've dedicated my life to. So closing the gaps. So what do we mean by that? We used to design coaching guides back in the day. We never called them assessments. We never said we're going to score you. But we focused on 3 really core areas and we gave them a competent, not yet competent, and a hell lot of feedback about how they can improve. So closing the gap is a continuous thing. How much time do you allocate for that? When do you do it? Is really important to think about. So I would say at a minimum it's done once a week. What we've found that's really successful is once a shift. Is a 5 or 10 minute session. So people can go away and go, right, I nailed that, I've got to fix this, I've got to do that. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this. Are we on time, Jono? We're doing well? Okay, good. So this is what sets everything apart. And as Shaun was talking to you about before, about the 8 ingredients, the Open Pantry, what did you say? This thing brings it to life. So the only true advantage any business has is the ability to learn faster and more effectively than your competitors. That's it. There's nothing else. You can have the best business model, that's great. You can have all of those 8 ingredients absolutely thriving. But there's other people who are doing the same. So at the end of the day, how can you create a culture where learning and development is done so effectively that any changes that happen, you can pick that up and deliver it really quickly. So what skills are we talking about to do that? We're talking about the ability to be adaptable. We're talking about the ability to problem solve. We're talking about the ability to be effective, to say, how many steps can we actually reduce this down to? Okay, for me, the greatest gift we have is the ability to teach others. So who enjoys teaching people at work? We've got a couple, good. We don't have many. So we showed you that picture before about our time in Sydney. We love those moments. We love seeing people have a breakthrough moment. But it's not just the training, it is the experience. What we did many years ago is we brought 20 of the best restaurant managers together across the country and we did a 5-day training program with them, intensive. What their job was to do was to incorporate every new manager in the country coming through to the business through their restaurant as a training manager. It was really effective that they didn't want to be restaurant managers anymore. They just wanted to be training managers. We're like, no, you got to do both. But it was the experience that they got at the end of those 5 days that really made sure that all the standards that were done in each of those restaurants we knew were the best, without compromise. No shortcuts. So the last one here is our role as leaders to build the very best team. We can only do that through developing others. Okay, Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Shaun. We're going to open up the floor to a few questions. Before I do that, I just wanted to let everyone know that we can share this content. We've got videographer today following us around. So all this stuff, you're welcome to take notes and photos, but we can also share it with you later. Cool. So I'm going to throw to the floor for questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Thanks. First of all, thank you so much. That was so informative. My question is to Shaun. Based on all the 8 key ingredients you spoke about, which one would you focus on first, or which one do you think is the priority for everybody in the room?
Thank you for that random question. I definitely think, I think they're all important, but I definitely think talent is the most important. I think obviously we run fantastic hospitality businesses and those run by humans. The feedback that we get when we do any kind of mass recruitment, or we're just recruiting for one role, and I talk to a candidate about someone's past and why they've left particular businesses, is because they didn't like the manager they were working with usually, or because they weren't getting development in that particular brand. People don't usually leave the brand for the brand values or anything like that. That's not usually the thing that happens. It's usually around people. So if you can get your people right, especially the person who's running your business, the person who's sitting underneath the person running that business, helping them do it, and the team culture as a whole, that's the most important thing to get right. Before you get how you make a coffee better, what technology stack you put in place, what location are you going to be on next, should I do an Eggs Benedict or not anymore? Just get your people right first.
Okay, any more questions? Anyone?
Thanks, John. Thank you. I did put my hand up before when you asked around challenging of training individuals, and I feel you did touch on it around concentration is one. Advice on improving learning engagement through not only a business but then as in individuals, because it is probably a big thing in our business right now. Technology's impacted the way people learn. I'm finding that it is that concentration span that is impacting just the forward momentum of learning.
I love that question. It's awesome. So here's the thing. Learning engagement at the moment for this particular generation coming through is all about co-creation. So it's not about you just determining what training steps they're going to take. They want to feel part of it. So it's building a roadmap, and it's saying, over this period of time, this is what we're going to learn. This is the commitment that I'm going to give to you. This is what great looks like for us. We get this right, this is how our business is going to operate. We're going to kick all these goals. So that's what I need. What do you need? What's going to keep you fulfilled? A bunch of questions around how do they like to learn? What support are they going to need? How do they want me to check in on that is really critical. But the main point I want to really make sure that's clear is this co-creation part. That doesn't mean that they get to choose what they're learning the whole time. It means they get more of a say in the journey through that process. So you've found people in your businesses who have a huge passion to be supervisors, team leaders, managers, owners. They all have very different paths. They've all got something in mind. I very rarely see people just wanting to be a waiter or a waitress. It's a stepping stone to somewhere. So tap into that. Figure out what that is. Speak to them on that level. Some people just want to be the best coffee makers in the world and then start their own business and dominate the world after that. Whatever that is, help them find it. So then you can always come back to that. You can always keep the conversation going around how are we going, supporting that learning. The one last thing I want to talk to you about is how can you bring them in to work on certain things outside of their role that they might be interested in? So for instance, marketing. What about visual merchandising. What other elements could you actually help just gain some of their contribution in? What are your ideas about this? What could we be doing different here? And you'll start to see that engagement rise. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a question over here from... Oh, you can clap if you want. We're going to keep going, though. Alison's got a question.
I really hope this makes sense. Big picture thinking, do we think that there is a missed opportunity in Australia with schools, industry, government, understanding that hospitality is a critical, important, can be a high-end career, as opposed to I'm just a barista or I'm backpacking through, so I go and work at a cafe and I'm on low wages, but you go to Europe and you're like, oh my God, this restaurant, this person cares about what I'm going to eat, and it's just, we're worlds apart. It's a dead-end job. I think. Oh, it makes sense, yeah.
First I'll say I'm actually talking, I got asked by Holmes Glen TAFE to talk this week in front of 65 TAFE teachers this Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that because I'm probably going to give some hard reality to them about the state of the industry. It's so multifaceted and it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So I started out my career as 16 as a baker's assistant at Bakes Delight because I couldn't get a job at Woolworths and a couple of other places. Bakes Delight took me on. And that led me to a career to be a franchise partner at 21, a multi-site franchise partner at 25. It was only because I was mentored extremely well, and I talked about this last year when I was here at Grinders, mentored extremely well by my first boss in hospitality, that I was given those opportunities to grow and learn. And I also was lucky enough that I had a training framework around me, which made me want to learn more, encouraged me to do more, and there was never a no in regards to how far and how quick I could go. It was just maybe, let's just wait a bit longer. So I was actually going to own a bakery at 20, and Bakes Delight said, no, like, we just need you to wait till you're 21, and then we'll feel comfortable with that. In regards, so I think as an industry, I think we need to do better in order to mentor the talent that's underneath us and show them opportunity and show them learning outcomes in order to move forward. But it also needs to come from TAFE and it needs to come from schools. I think home economics should be mandatory in every single high school in Australia in order to think about obviously making food properly, but also the fact that there's hospitality is a career. And I've been fortunate to be in the industry for a decent amount of time and do completely different things. And that's only because I have the ability to do that, and that's awesome. So I think it's just going to take time, but I think it's multifaceted. And I think we can do better with inside our venues every day in order to mentor our staff to believe there is growth.
Yeah, for sure. That's incredibly right. So, less than 10 years ago, I ran a traineeship program for 2,500 hospitality trainees across the country. Now, they were all pretty much 17 to 20-year-olds, and at the time, it was seen as not a pathway to get into a certificate for or to get into a diploma and make that a real choice as a career. It was seen as being able to just transfer the training that would have happened in the workplace through a program. And there was benefits that were attached to that, et cetera, et cetera. But the attitude shifted and it was like, no, I want more money and I don't want to do the traineeship program. So I think a big part of it is how are we actually selling the pathways? How are we giving people more choice? Because hospitality will be around forever. Cafes will be around forever. As you said, people need to drink and eat. Hopefully we do that in some luxury and some pretty cool environments. But the problem is I guess at a broad level, is how is it being supported from large organisations all the way down to cafe owners? So I'm not sure if any of you have ever had an experience running a traineeship or having trainees in your business, doing apprenticeships, but it's tough. It is tough. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of red tape. So my first job was in a cafe, and I've been in hospitality ever since, just doing different roles. So there is an incredible pathway to be done. And I think if we can make sure it's really clear about what are those pathways available once you've done something like that, like look around this group here, a lot of owners, a lot of operators. The possibilities in hospitality are one of the few industries that's endless. And that's something that's not promoted enough.
Thanks, guys.
Question at the back, sorry?
Just one here. That's all right. No. You spoke about backpackers, and now we have, you see there's a lack of seasoned hospitality workers. How do you cope? Because it's very difficult to get someone, hospitality, if you know what hospitality is, it's common sense, most of it, that you do on the floor. And then you have, how do you cope? Because you spoke about the 16-week program, and you have someone coming with no, or they may have a little bit, and they say, okay, they have worked somewhere overseas, they are baristas, but when they see Australian coffees and latte art and everything else, it's very different. So how do you cope with that? What's the challenge over there?
I thought I might get this question after I talk about backpackers for 16 weeks. So when we first started that program, and backpackers were probably about 50 to 60% of his employment base, we got some challenges around people leaving quite quickly. So what I asked him to embed was really making sure that pre-work before that person was employed, because he would get literally about 25 resumes a day come over the counter. So obviously work out a really respectful way of doing recruitment, and obviously doing pre-work in regards with contracts on board, making sure their orientation was really good, their day one was right. But then we also focused on the roles that those 16 weeks could really handle. So they were floor runners, they were people taking orders at till. If they'd had barista experience before, they would then go through a training program on site with two of the head baristas, and they could then do coffee, where they do shots, or where they do milk, or where they do both. But they would focus on those key areas. So really just making sure that it was delivering on a great experience all the time, focusing on those steps of service. So we focused on the things that they had some experience before, which was customer-facing roles, and we just amplified that, and that was the repetition for that period of time. Because people that are there, holiday makers that are there for that period of time, if they go to Airlie Beach and they might, go up further into Queensland, all they want to do is make a heap of money real quick. And they want to work at a place they really love and enjoy, right? So if they work 30 to 40 hours a week, making sure that customer interaction is really, really high. Plus there are a lot of locals that are there as well. So making sure you're introducing them to locals so they feel part of that fabric for that 4 months they're there. Does that answer your question a bit?
Workers in looking for jobs and
Sure.
Because you lack that part of it. You want to keep the balance right.
Yes. I totally agree. It is tough with the balance, but we found if we had a really good cafe manager, 2 IC who were local, at least you could have that consistency coming through. So those 16-week holiday makers, if they'd had some experience as supervisors and those kind of things before, they might help out on a Saturday and Sunday being a quasi kind of supervisor or something like that, but they wouldn't have those roles because there's not enough time to really embed them in the foundations of the business to then go and run a shift with 10 other people, right? So.
Anybody else got a question? Last call for questions. All right, we'll wind up there, but let's have another round of applause for Chris and Shaun.